This is Kevin Pruitt with episode 3 of Rising Tide Startups. My guest today is Katie Franklin. Katie, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
All right. Well, I was born and raised in Colorado on the Front Range of the beautiful Rocky Mountains. And so I have a great love and appreciation for nature and hiking and just the outdoors in general. I've been happily married for 23 years. I have two awesome kids who are now pretty much young adults, which will definitely make you feel old.
Who are standing right on the other side of the camera holding up signs going, tell them how awesome we are, Mom.
Exactly, exactly. Um, I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, and my husband and I and my family, we've lived around the world serving both God and country,
All
and
right.
basically been an entrepreneur at heart my whole life. And at the age of 42, I've finally been allowed to kind of dip my foot in those waters and see what I can do with it. So it's about this time last year that I really started focusing on starting up Franklin Engraving, and been really kind of focusing on the business side of things for about 6 months now, and just really excited about where I'm at and what's ahead.
Well, give me the kind of the 1 minute elevator pitch of what Franklin Engraving is.
So Franklin Engraving is basically specialty gifting made easy. If it's, the expression that it's the thought that counts in a gift. Well, if it's truly the thought that counts, why not have a personally engraved gift that includes the thought inside the gift? And so I engrave things like wood and cork and leather and canvases, all different mediums right now,
Mm-hmm.
to make that very special gift for the one that you love.
So tell me that do that motto again because you buffered just a little bit as you were saying that.
All right, so it's specialty gifting made easy.
Specialty
Basically,
gifting made easy. Okay.
one-stop shopping for the people that you love. You come with a great idea, and I will do my best to engrave it into a gift.
And we'll talk about this later in the show, but your primary presence online right now is through your Facebook page. There we go. We're going to start facebook.com. There we go.
Yeah,
Let's see if that's available. Yeah,
I think
Facebook.
that's sure.
So Franklin Engraving on Facebook.
Sure.
Okay. All
And
right.
on Etsy as well.
So tell me how long you've been pursuing this idea and what was the inspiration for starting Franklin Engraving?
So, like I said, I've kind of been entrepreneurial at heart for a long time, and I've always wanted to have my business, work for myself, and be creative in some way or another. So, started off a while back thinking maybe I could make cakes, or I could do catering, or I could, I don't know, it kind of ran the gamut of different things. And um, last year, we recently moved into a new home where there's a good workshop space down in the basement. And I really enjoyed doing woodworking. And at first, I kind of thought maybe I might do furniture refinishing. And I don't know, there's just a lot involved with that and requires a lot of extra space for storage of
Mm-hmm.
inventory. And so I just did some research and thought, well, what kind of woodworking is out there that that uses creativity and has maybe sort of smaller products that take up less room. And so found this engraving possibility, and I met somebody who does engraving on the side in Memphis, Tennessee, and he was able to kind of lead me into maybe the purchase of the machine and walk me through all of the ins and outs of that. And so I just decided that engraving wood would be the way to go. So I bought the machine. I think I received it in April, and then started rolling ahead after that.
So when you say engraving, are you talking about what goes in my mind is the old wood burning set, with the is it burning on wood? Is it cutting out stencils? What exactly is it? All the above? Tell me, explain to a layperson like myself what engraving means on wood.
Okay, yeah, so it's a CO2 laser engraving machine. So it just is light, refined down to just a minute little beam
Okay.
that will burn the wood to make an image on basically the surface of it. or all the way up to cutting all the way through the wood. I could also do, I can mask it, which ultimately creates a stencil.
Mm-hmm.
Where you can pull the masking off and spray paint or stain or use acrylic paint or whatever to fill in that stencil space. So it does all of those things.
And kids, don't put your hands in the machine while it's running, because I can't
Not
imagine that would be dangerous. So you said your inspiration was a friend that actually did this. Was he fairly successful on this kind of side business, or was it just something he was playing around with? And so what led you to believe that, hey, this could actually work as a side business?
Yeah. So this guy, he actually has his own business making shelving units and cabinets and things like that. Not like home cabinets, but for shelving for stores and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Like more industrial. Right.
Yeah. Or restaurants. He's done menus and things. But the engraving side of things was kind of an added to it. So if he had the display cases that needed the people's logo on the top or whatever,
right,
he might engrave into that. So yeah, huge success, but he's successful at everything he does. So he just really kind of helped me take away a lot of that fear and trepidation of, oh my gosh, this thing is from China and what am I going to do with it when I get it? And he walked me through the whole process.
So the actual machine you ordered, the engraving machine. So give us an idea of what kind of capital outlay we're talking about on an engraving machine. How big is it?
Well, let's see. I don't know. You might be able to see it back here behind me. So that is the engraving machine. People say it looks like a large tanning bed, and I use the same saying, only tan the parts you don't want to keep. But yeah, so and a lot of people ask too if it takes a lot of electricity or whatever. It really doesn't. We haven't seen a huge bump in our electricity bill or anything like that. So, but I can do pieces anywhere from about 2 feet by 3 feet that are all in one intact, or I can do pieces at a time and then put them together to make a much larger piece.
So it sounds, fairly simple. Put the piece of wood in, I have the design on the screen, I hit go and it cuts it out. But there was a lot more to it than that, right? So what preparation did you have to do to get to the point that you can actually do this? So what are all the pieces that kind of fit together?
So basically, the one major thing I have going for me is I'm a creative person. And I kind of have that idea of, well, I don't know how to do it, but I can probably figure it out, or I can learn, So when I started off, I knew I wanted to do woodworking, and I basically went from converting an old dresser into a bench. And in order to do that, the saw that I had was a coping saw. And I don't know if very little saw with a little blade. That's what I used to cut all of my wood with in the living room of our house. Wes wasn't a fan. But anyways, I didn't know how to use a table saw or a miter saw, scroll saw, none of those things. And so basically I started researching the different pieces of woodworking machinery and which one's best, what's it used for. So I had to learn how to work the wood. And then when the machine got here, I obviously had to figure out how to translate the pictures, because everything else was in Chinese, of how to assemble and set up the machine to the software. And the software came in Chinese as well. So, and then on top of that, there's the design side of things. So before you can create a piece, you have to design the piece. And I didn't know anything about Photoshop. And so my wonderful son was like, let me help you out, Mom. And so we had mini Photoshop 101, and he kind of brought me up to speed on that. And then there's laser engraving software that basically I have to convert the Photoshop image into a JPEG and send it over to my other laptop, which then communicates to the engraving machine. And once it has that image and I set the settings up for the power and the speed that it's going to raster across the image or across the piece, hit go, and then it does its own thing.
But I imagine there's a steep learning curve. You probably burned some wood on the front end of having to get the
Literally
settings just right. And
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. But I'm also part of a laser engraving Facebook site
Mm-hmm.
that the people are just so helpful. And so you can go on there and just one time, not too long ago before Christmas, I was trying to do something and I just could not figure out how to get this image right. Like, and I needed it to be done in the next 2 days. And so I was just burning the midnight oil. I got on there and just said, help,
Mm-hmm.
please. Does anybody know how I can get past this hurdle? And a man actually made a YouTube video showing me
Wow.
step by step how to do it that night and posted it. I was just completely floored, but that's how helpful a lot of these people are. And so there's answers out there. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to, trial and error is good, really solidifies what you've learned. But sometimes I just rather go straight to it, work smarter, not harder kind of thing.
Absolutely. And I think that I would like somebody to do a YouTube video about how to do a good podcast for your podcast host. That would be very helpful to me. So let's talk a little more general from a business standpoint. What are say one or two like non-financial goals that you set that were business goals that you kind of had in mind and from the time that you started, and have you met those?
Okay. So the first goal was basically focused on all of the things that we talked about, that steep learning curve. I knew I've got to get proficient at using the tools and learning the software, and graphic design is
Mm-hmm.
just huge with this. And so I just really focused on fine tuning each one of those skills. And I certainly haven't perfected any of them yet, but I do feel like now, 6 months into it, I've gotten a pretty good grasp on it. And yeah, I'm pretty confident that I've at least nearly met that goal.
So kind of mastering the basic skills. What's another goal that you kind of had in mind to maybe even a
So
financial goal that you don't have to give us numbers, but say
yeah,
I wanted to do this, reach this plateau or whatever.
yeah. So really, I was just hoping. I wanted to set up a website. I thought that was going to be like the thing, is having my own website. And honestly, there so much goes into that, and you actually have to have pieces made to put on there, and you have to
Yeah.
have established certain things to put on there. And so it was kind of like creating a roadblock for me. It was like I was just getting stuck there. And at the advice of several friends, people who have been doing small business on their own, they recommended just going with Facebook first, because it's friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
It's people who care about me, want to see me succeed, and so that did start off pretty well that way. And other people recommended having an Etsy shop, and so I've done that. I'm just not finding great success from that, because it's hard to get your presence kind of up on the front
Ranked or
page.
higher. Yeah, that's good. That's good. So, and that may be something that our listening audience can speak into is, how do you increase the rankings of Etsy?
Yeah,
There's probably some Etsy aficionados out there that
I'm sure there are. Yeah.
could
So I
give
haven't
some
actually
insights.
accomplished that goal of the website. My son did help me. He sat down and we put one kind of together, and he got it looking pretty good. But um, I don't know. I just got scared to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
I
one of those
see
things
that.
we can do later. Yeah.
Hmm.
So give me your what you would consider like your lowest point since you started, other than burning a couple pieces of wood.
Yeah. So I would say it's interesting, but it was the day that I realized that everything is owned by somebody.
Unpack
Because,
that a little bit for us.
yeah, um, there are copyrights and trademarks and intellectual property rights on just about everything, and so you think you have to be very creative in
Mm-hmm.
this industry, or you spend a lot of time and money actually trying to get permissions and licenses and things like that. For instance, I come from my family, west side of the family, anyways, loves Tennessee Vols. A simple orange tea, man, I could probably sell lots of things with an orange tea on it. But the hoops you've got to jump through
Yeah.
to actually make money on something like that, to me, it's not worth it. And so you've just got to be very creative. And when I learned that even little bits of pieces of a song, parts of a verse. If I wanted to engrave that, somebody owns those words.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know, it was a bit frustrating. And so just getting past that and saying, okay, what can I do that is completely original
Right,
and
right.
work?
I mean, I would think that that would be true in a number of different, outlets. I mean, not just engraving, but if like T-shirt design and doing a song, like doing a cover of a song or something like that. I mean, just you would run into those same hurdles. What we hate to end on a low point. So tell me your highest high that you've experienced since you started Franklin Engraving.
So just before Christmas, I had a customer request that I make this large sign for her, which was about 2 feet by 3 feet. And she wanted it to be able to hang coffee mugs off of it. And she wanted it to say, in the morning, all I need is a little bit of coffee and a whole lot of Jesus. So I like the saying, it's pretty cute. But it required me to go out and get the materials, cut the materials, sand it, stain it, design the image, and then I masked the whole thing off and put it in the laser engraver and did a vector kind of a very shallow cut. So it cut out the masking and made that stencil, pulled it out of there, and I filled in the stencil with acrylic paint, pulled off the masking, and then, of course, I had to affix all the pieces
Sure.
together with screws and glue and all that fun stuff. But anyways, it was just the finished product was just a moment where I was like, there you go. All of those things that I had really hoped I would accomplish that I could do were like exemplified in
Mm,
one piece.
wow.
So, and then
So
of course, delivering it to the customer and seeing her satisfaction in it was the icing on the cake.
So do you have a picture of this that you could maybe send to us that we can include in the show notes? Or I
Yeah,
think
I'd
I
love
think our
to.
listening audience would love to see what the culmination of the piece, the what do you call it, the magnum opus or whatever of your putting all the pieces together that you said you learned over the course of starting this business, from graphic design to stain to woodworking to running the engraving machine to I mean even on Facebook. I mean, you have to somehow expound on this on social media as well. So
Yeah,
um,
thank you.
let me ask you this. We've kind of talked around this issue, but if you wanted feedback from our rising tide listening audience, what are one or two things that you would really be able to pinpoint that says, I would really like feedback on these two major issues? And it may be something you've already touched on, or it may be something new, but what would be two things that we could list on the feedback report and have people speak into if they're listening to the podcast?
Okay. I think probably one of my greatest struggles is marketing,
Okay.
how to get my name out there. And, um, you know, it's kind of a struggle to be all of the things. That's the glory of being able to work for yourself, is not having a whole bunch of other people to tell you what to do and how to do it and all of that. But at the same time, it's all on you. So after I design it and I burn it and I have a finished product, it's not finished yet. Now I've got to go take pictures of it and I have to make them, appealing to the
Right.
eye. I have to do all of that stuff. And then I have to figure out how to get it out there and get the greatest number of eyes on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so just figuring out, I think too, there are multiple ways to market yourself, but my fear is, how do I keep up with all of them once I get it out there? If I've got, Instagram and people maybe commenting on that, and then I've got Facebook and people commenting on that, and then the Etsy account, there's a way to communicate through that. And then if I have a website, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose that connectivity and something's going to fall through the cracks. I think that's really my greatest angst, is that I'm going to miss something.
That's a great question, and I think that we'll get some interesting feedback on how to make those connections. I mean, I do know there are services out there that can kind of when you submit something to one, it kind of goes out to all in essence, and they're interconnected. So I think that could be really helpful as well. What's one other thing that would come to mind that you would love to have our listening audience speak into, other than the marketing and promotion and kind of the interconnectivity of those? What's something else?
Um, think probably the other side of it would be the financial aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking at now starting up QuickBooks and managing things through that, but just
I mean, how to account for the kind of the small business side of
yeah,
things, or
I haven't quite. I just haven't focused on it.
mm-hmm.
How's that for a business
Yeah,
owner? It's just hard. I had so many other things to learn, and so it's like I use PayPal, and they're really good
mm-hmm.
at kind of invoicing and keeping up with things. And then on Etsy, they keep up with all of the
Sure.
financial ins and outs, and you get little reports and things like that. But as far as like, I use a business account for purchasing materials, and then just kind of even on the pricing side of things, figuring out how to price. And it takes a lot of research. Okay, what are other people charging for these sort of services? And, is it per hour that I should be looking at what I should be making, or is it how big the piece is? There's just so many aspects that go into the business side of it, the money side of it, that I don't know how people pull it all together.
Right, right. Well, that's. I mean, you almost touched on two different sides of things. One is kind of the income side of things, and one is kind of accounting for the revenue that the company is producing. So we will add those on the feedback report, those two that you've mentioned, and any other feedback that people have. I'll provide that to you as well. But I appreciate doing that. Let's move now to a little deeper dive that is kind of called the Life Quad section of our interview, and we just want to ask you really 4 questions that are kind of a deeper dive, so we can kind of get inside the head of Katie Franklin a little bit, and see what's bouncing around in there in your head and your heart. So, tell me one person that you follow online that really inspires you, and why.
It's not really as much online as it is just, she has an online presence, but also just on television and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy watching and learning from Joanna Gaines.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto.
I just, not only she and her husband, like they're just super transparent, and they enjoy what they do, and they enjoy doing it together. And they're creative. You can tell their strengths complement each other's weaknesses. And but you can just tell that they really enjoy what they're doing, and they do it tremendously well. And so, yeah.
It's really interesting you mentioned that. I just do a little quick segue here. One of maybe my closest friend on the planet lives in Waco, Texas, and and knows them. And
Wow.
he works for a nonprofit called Restoration Gateway, and he's the American director of Restoration Gateway, and they have been kind of the spokespeople for their major fundraising event the last couple of years. So, and he said they're just as genuine off camera as they are on camera. So I really want to just applaud your choice there. I mean, I think that there's a real sense of inspiration. I think they're inspiring a lot of people to do a lot of different things, and especially creative and kind of startup, like if you're doing flipping houses, or if you're doing home design, or even engraving, whatever you're doing, whatever is a creative art. I think they've really played just a tremendous role in how to do it right, how to do it, and really just they're just an inspiring story. So I appreciate you saying that. Tell me a life quote that really inspires you, and why.
Okay. Well, this isn't a quote that probably anybody else would have heard, because it's from my dad, but he, from a very young age, when I started working,
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to instill in his kids a very strong work ethic, and he did. He was a Marine, and he, had that.
Hoorah.
Yeah, exactly. But he said, hey, no matter what you do in life, especially for work, make sure that you learn.
Wow. So always be learning.
Always be learning. He said, you may not enjoy the job at hand, but there's always something to be gained from the process. So do it do it to the best of your ability and learn from it so that the next step you can, add to it and have benefited from it.
Sure. Well, just follow up with that. What's one piece of advice that you would give Katie Franklin 1.0, just before you started your business? What's one thing that you know now that you think would benefit our listening audience if they're thinking about starting something up, and just say, I wish I would have known this a year ago and done this differently?
I would say don't listen to your fears. Don't listen to your doubts. And a lot of that, like I do highly recommend writing a business plan, just like any good business person would recommend, for sure. But the problem with that I found is you've got this business plan, you've got things laid out, and then you're like, okay, I was anyways, I'll start when I get step 1, step 2, step 3 completed, like when it's perfect, when it's right. And it just takes so long. And then your doubts creep in because, wow, I just haven't gotten even step 2 done yet. And so I say, have a plan and have very serious goals in mind, but run after them, go after them. And the other pieces kind of come as you go along. But if you just wait until you're fully ready, you're never going to be ready.
I think there's an interesting quote by Reid Hoffman, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he's the guy that created LinkedIn. Okay. And he said, if you're not embarrassed by your 1.0 product, you waited too long. And exactly. I think that's just a great mindset to have. And there's one other thing that came to mind as you were saying that is there's I don't know exactly who it is, but I think they're like an MMA fighter. And they say, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And then the plan kind of goes out the window and you just kind of, you go into survival mode. So yeah. That's good advice. The business plan is a good guide, but it can also be, you have this analysis paralysis that might set in if you just kind of wait. And another thing you touched on that really came to mind was almost like, have you heard the term like the imposter syndrome? That says, who am I to do this? Who am I to do a podcast? Who am I to do an engraving business? I mean, do I really have the skills available, or the skills to be able to do this and do this well? And that little doubt, speaker that's in everyone's head and everyone's heart is going to be saying, you really probably aren't qualified to do this. But I love that to go back and say, just silence the doubt that you're hearing within your own kind of psyche. And that is great advice. So tell us how listeners can find you online. What's the best way to find you? They're looking for Katie Franklin of Franklin Engraving.
Okay, right now, basically there's just the 2 avenues, and that would be on facebook.com/franklin.engraving. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is etsy.com/shop/Franklin Engraving. All one word together.
Okay, it's all together. Okay. Those will be listed in the show notes as well. Katie, it's been just a true pleasure having you with us today, and I just wanted to follow up. Is there anything that I have not touched on that you want to add that you think might be an interesting tidbit, or we can just end it with just thanking you for being with us?
I would say just as a last note to people who are looking at starting or are doing some sort of startup on their own right now, is make sure you surround yourself with people who are encouragers and who believe in you. They might not totally get what you're doing, but they believe in you and want to see you succeed. And I have friends and family who have just been huge supporters and encouragers. And man, on those days where self-doubt is reigning supreme, and you have somebody who says, "Oh man, you've got this. You're killing it this way," or that last thing you did was amazing. Just those little few words of encouragement can kind of push you through your hardest days. And so definitely seek those people out who want to be kind of your champion or your cheerleader. It's huge.
That is a great way to end our podcast today. There's a guy named Jim Rohn that talks about you become the 5 people that you surround yourself with. So it's interesting to surround yourself with people that are going to be encouragement to you. And we have plenty of discouraging voices around us all the time, including
So,
the little doubt guy in our head. But
yeah.
Katie, thank you again for joining us. Now, Rising Tide Startup, it is your turn. It's your turn to speak into Franklin Engraving, and we want some feedback, and we want to touch on the two things that Katie mentioned, and any other feedback that you have that you think might be helpful to her, or helpful to anyone in our listening audience. And just always remember, guys, all boats rise in a rising tide. Katie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.